I'll never forget the morning they rolled up like a bargain basement version of law enforcement. Two black SUVs skidded to a stop outside my gate, red and blue flashing like a clearance sale at Walmart. Four men jumped out in matching black uniforms with patches that read HOA Security Enforcement. They shouted, I was under arrest for non-compliance. Neighbors gasped, curtains fluttered, and Karen, our HOA president in a fire engine red suit, stood there grinning like she'd hit the jackpot. It would have been terrifying if their badges hadn't looked like party store props and one guy's handcuffs still had the price tag dangling. For a few shaky moments, the neighborhood bought the act. What none of them knew, though, was that a very different set of sirens was already headed our way. Before I get into the mess that followed, drop a comment. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? When I bought this place, I thought I'd escaped city nonsense. After 25 years of grinding 9 to 5, I'd saved enough for a farmhouse with wide porches, rolling acres, and, best of all, land outside any HOA jurisdiction. No more newsletters about mailbox paint, no more fines for leaving a trash can out too long, no more Karens dictating blind placement. I was wrong. From day one, the adjacent HOA had it out for me. My deed was clear. No covenants, no dues, no obligations. Try explaining that to Karen. She marched up my driveway the first week I moved in, clipboard clutched like the 10 Commandments, and her lips pursed so tight they looked ready to crack. You'll need to register with the HOA immediately, she announced as if serving papers. I laughed. Ma'am, my property is outside your development. Her smile froze. You ever see someone swallow a lemon? That was it. Some neighbors welcomed me with pies and waves. Others avoided me like I had a contagious stain. Karen warned anyone who spoke to me too much. She'd cultivated fear like a bully runs a playground. Rumors spread fast. The man doesn't pay dues, they said. He built without permits. His fence is dangerous. A fence older than her whole HOA, by the way. Gossip became the HOA's favorite weapon. Then the letters arrived. Crisp white envelopes stamped with a shiny gold seal. Homeowners Association compliance notice, demanding $120 in delinquent dues and threatening enforcement. I nearly spat out my coffee. Enforcement on land they didn't control. I tossed it in the burn barrel. Next week, another letter claiming my driveway encroached on common property, the same driveway that had been there for decades. The official seal looked off like a bored teen had drawn the eagle with uneven wings. Still, I worried. If I knew it was fake, would my neighbors? Would they see a gold stamp and believe? Things escalated. Cars idled at the lane's end with headlights off. A man with a telephoto lens photographed my barn. Black SUVs cruised past at night. 2 weeks later, I was unloading hay when Karen strutted up flanked by two young men in matching polos embroidered HOA security. She'd hired her own private force, arms folded, tattoos peeking from sleeves, fresh from some discount biker bar. This is your final warning, she declaimed. I set down a bale, wiped my brow, and grinned. Ma'am, the only thing I'm failing to comply with is your imagination. Unless you're here to stack hay, you're trespassing. Her face went crimson. She snapped her fingers and the guards leaned in. I laughed. What's next? You gonna call the HOA police? Funny how jokes turn into reality. That night on the porch, I saw the unmarked SUVs again, parked under the trees waiting. Karen wasn't bluffing. She was plotting something bigger than letters and gossip. Most folks would have called the sheriff, but I've dealt with bullies all my life. They puff up, hope you flinch, and use fear to hold power. The minute you don't, they unravel. I chose not to cower. If Karen wanted a fight, I'd meet her. Truth cuts through the loudest lies, and I planned to use it. By week 3, my mailbox was fuller than a politician's promise book, stuffed with compliance notices stamped with that same crooked gold seal as if Karen bought a label maker and ran wild. One letter called my barn a fire hazard. Another accused my tractor of being an eyesore. My favorite demanded I remove my pond because unregulated bodies of water attract pests. You can't make this up. At first I laughed, but then the letters started changing neighbors' behavior. Mrs. Parker stopped bringing pies. Kids who used to play near my fence bolted when I walked by. Paper, even fake paper, wields power, and Karen knew it. One night I caught movement by the hedgerow, the glint of a telephoto lens. I shouted and the figure bolted. Cars idled at the lane again. A clipboard guy strolled by making notes. I started waving at the watchers just to annoy them. One evening I stood on the porch in my robe and said, "Make sure you get my good side," and the spy ducked behind a bush. Score one. But Karen doubled down. She strode onto my property unannounced with 2 goons and a clipboard. "You're in violation of multiple HOA codes," she barked. "Your rules stop at your property line," I said. Her goon puffed his chest and threatened trouble. I stepped close enough he could smell sawdust. "Buddy, unless you're here to hammer nails, you're trespassing. Leave before I call the real cops." Karen spat a classic villain line. "You'll regret defying us." The letters kept coming, this time claiming I owed $230 in late fees. Failure to remit will result in detention. Detention? Who writes this stuff? Then it got serious. The envelopes appeared in my mailbox without postage, someone sneaking up at midnight to slip them in, a federal offense. I set up trail cameras, motion-activated and infrared. Within 2 nights, the footage showed Karen herself in heels sneaking down my driveway, stuffing envelopes into my box. The next morning, I printed a still and taped it to the mailbox with a sticky note. "Smile for the camera." By noon, she was at my gate screaming I had no right to film her. "On my property," she hissed, as if midnight trespass and stuffing my mailbox was normal. Her face turned scarlet and she stomped off, muttering that I'd pay. And by pay, she meant trouble, money, influence, whatever it took to make me disappear from the neighborhood she wanted to control. Because not long after, things went from unsettling to downright dangerous. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the hills, I heard engines rumbling. 2 black SUVs crept past my property windows tinted, plates missing. They circled twice before stopping at the far end of the lane. Inside, silhouettes leaned over radios, whispering. For the first time, a real chill ran through me. This wasn't neighborhood drama anymore. It was turning into impersonation, intimidation, flat-out criminal behavior. I texted a buddy of mine, a deputy with the sheriff's office, asked him to swing by sometime. He shot back, "Be careful. Some folks don't know where the line is until the cuffs go on." Smart words. But I wasn't about to be the guy who called the law every time Karen sneezed. Pride, maybe. Stubbornness, definitely. I wanted to take her nonsense head on, prove she couldn't chase me off my land. What I didn't realize was that her next move would make every letter, every threat, every SUV look like child's play. Because Karen wasn't just whispering about calling the cops anymore. She was planning to be the cops. And that's how we got to the day the HOA police stormed my gate, fake badges flashing, ready to drag me off for non-compliance. What they didn't count on was who was coming up right behind them. The morning it happened started deceptively quiet. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee, rocking on the porch swing, when sirens split the air. Not the steady, gut-dropping wail of real patrol cars. No, these sounded warped, like somebody's cousin downloaded a police siren app and blasted it through busted speakers. Still, it was loud enough. Birds bolted from the trees. Neighbors pulled back their curtains. And before I could set my mug down, 2 matte black SUVs tore around the corner. Lights flickered from cheap bars duct taped to the roofs. They skidded to a stop at my gate, gravel spitting. My first thought was, well, I'll be damned. She actually did it. Out spilled 4 men in identical black uniforms. The patches read, HOA Security Enforcement in bold white letters, though the stitching looked like it had been done by a shaky hand. Their belts sagged with plastic cuffs, dollar store pepper spray, and radios not even tuned to the same channel. One guy's holster carried what looked like a paintball gun painted matte black. I had to fight the urge to laugh. "Step forward and place your hands behind your back," one barked, voice trembling. For what? I asked loud enough for my phone camera to catch because yes, I'd already hit record. Never underestimate the power of evidence. "You're under arrest for non-compliance with community rules," another declared, unfolding a crumpled piece of paper like it was the Constitution. Behind them, neighbors started gathering. Mrs. Parker clutched her pearls. The Wilson kids whispered, eyes wide. And then, like a queen presiding over loyal subjects, Karen strutted out of her Lexus in a blazing red suit, clipboard clutched tight, smirk painted across her face. She looked like she was auditioning for dictator of the cul-de-sac. "It's over, Mr. Thompson," she purred. "You mocked the HOA, now you'll face the consequences." I leaned against the gate. "Karen, if I didn't know better, I'd say you raided the costume aisle at Party City." Her smirk wobbled, but she snapped back fast, waving to her fake cops. "Take him in." The 4 imposters moved forward, boots crunching gravel, trying hard to look tough. But they weren't in sync. One tripped on the curb and jogged to catch up. Another fiddled with his radio, pretending to call headquarters. I raised my voice for the neighbors to hear. These clowns aren't real cops. Look at their uniforms, no badges, no name tags. And since when does the sheriff run under HOA security enforcement? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Doubt flickered across faces. Karen, sensing her grip slipping, shrieked, "Don't listen! He's dangerous. Arrest him." One of the men whipped out zip ties, clearly planning to bind me. Another reached for the gate latch. I stepped forward, calm as Sunday service. Touch that gate and you're trespassing. And just so you know, it's all being filmed. I held up my phone, the red light blinking like a warning flare. For a heartbeat, hesitation crossed their faces. Then Karen screeched again, "Do it now!" One puffed his chest. Refusal to comply will result in escalated enforcement. I chuckled. Escalated enforcement? What are you gonna do? Fine me for mailbox height? Nervous laughter rippled through the neighbors. Karen stomped her heel, jabbing her clipboard like it was a sword. This isn't a game. You're finished today. Her words rang hollow, her eyes burning with desperation. The imposters pressed closer. One shook the gate like he could tear it free. Another shoved a fake badge in my face, the laminate peeling at the corner. Last chance. The leader barked, zip ties stretched in his glove. I tilted my head. Funny thing about last chances. They backfire when you're bluffing. Karen shrieked, "Break the gate if you have to!" That was her fatal mistake. Because the moment those words left her lips, I heard it. The deep whump, whump, whump of helicopter rotors cutting the sky. At first I thought I imagined it. But the sound swelled, vibrating in my chest. Then I caught the imposters' faces, their bravado melting into confusion. Down the lane, the roar of heavy engines. Real law enforcement SUVs, armored and gleaming, rolled into view. Their lights weren't the flickering knockoffs of Karen's circus. They were piercing beams of authority. Above, two helicopters cast shadows across the cul-de-sac. The crowd gasped. Mrs. Parker clutched her husband. Kids pointed skyward. Karen's smirk cracked for the first time. The fake cops froze mid-step. One muttered, "Oh, hell." The cavalry had arrived. And suddenly, this wasn't a petty HOA spat anymore. It was about to be a full-blown takedown. Rifles locked on him. My chest seized, heart hammering. This wasn't a neighborhood stunt anymore. "Drop it now!" one of the real officers barked. The fake cop's swagger evaporated in seconds. He glanced at Karen, who screeched, "Don't you dare drop it!" But the rifles aimed at his chest told another story. His hand shook, baton slipping from his fingers to the asphalt. The street seemed to breathe again for a split second. Relief flickered until Karen erupted. She stomped hard, clipboard rattling in her grip. "Cowards! You're supposed to protect me. Arrest him!" She jabbed at me like a judge calling for execution. That's when another of her imposters snapped. He lunged for my gate, straining against the chain. His buddy joined in, grunting like wannabe action heroes. The lock groaned under their pull. I filmed every second, disbelief pounding louder than fear. Were they really trying to break into private property with SWAT watching? "Back away from the gate!" came the command again. But adrenaline makes fools bold. One imposter yanked a spray-painted airsoft pistol from his holster. Up close, it was laughable, but from a distance, it looked like a gun. My stomach dropped. "Gun! Drop it!" an officer shouted. Time slowed. He froze mid-raise as a spotlight from the circling helicopter blasted him. Dust swirled, sirens blared, and his whole body sagged. The toy clattered to the ground. Hands on his head, he collapsed to his knees. Chaos erupted. Kids screamed. Parents dragged them back. Mrs. Parker fainted into her husband's arms. Neighbors who once whispered about me now yelled, "Get them out of here!" But Karen shrieked above the noise. "This is harassment! These are my officers! Arrest that man!" Her finger jabbed at me again, voice cracking. I couldn't resist. I cupped my hands and bellowed, "Karen, your HOA Halloween party is over. Go home!" The laughter that spread through the crowd was her death knell. Her power, her fear game, her fake empire, it crumbled right there. But Karen wouldn't quit. She lunged past SWAT, clipboard raised like a weapon. "This is my neighborhood. You don't belong here." She didn't finish. An officer twisted the clipboard from her hand, papers scattering like confetti. HOA fines fluttered to the ground, poetic justice in the wind. "Step back, ma'am," the officer warned. She thrashed, shrieking, "Don't touch me! I'm the president." A neighbor muttered, "Not anymore," and laughter roared again. The imposters were face down now, zip-tied with their own gear. SWAT moved smoothly, logging fake weapons as evidence. One officer came to me. Sir, you okay? I nodded, blood still surging. Better than them, I said, gesturing to the heap of groaning fakes. Karen screeched again. This isn't over! I'll sue all of you. I shook my head. Karen, the only thing you can sue is your tailor for that blazer. Even the officer smirked. But then she bolted, heels skidding as she tried to rally her fake cops. Still shrieking about sovereign HOA authority, she shoved a SWAT officer. That was it. Ma'am, you're under arrest for obstruction, the commander declared. The crowd exploded in cheers. Phones filmed from every angle as Karen was cuffed, this time in real steel. Her scream tore through the cul-de-sac. I am the president! And just like that, the HOA queen was dethroned in front of her kingdom. For me, behind my gate, it was the sweetest victory I'd ever tasted. But I knew it wasn't over. The truth behind this fake HOA police force was uglier than anyone imagined. As helicopters thundered overhead, the sound pressed into bone. Spotlights cut through swirling dust, neighbors shielding their eyes in awe and terror. Even I stood stunned. I'd expected deputies, maybe the sheriff, but helicopters circling like hawks? That was another level. The fake cops whimpered face down. SWAT barked commands with icy precision. Karen screeched over the rotors. I'm the HOA president! You have no authority. An officer towered over her, calm as stone. Ma'am, you are under arrest. Stay still. Her shrill cries were drowned in the storm. Neighbors clutched phones, jaws dropped. Fear turned to relief. Mr. Parker muttered, I knew she was power-hungry, but this... The truth was dawning. Karen wasn't a leader. She was a tyrant who finally tripped over her own power grab. And as SWAT pulled duffel bags of fake badges, uniforms, and bogus citations from her SUVs, the illusion shattered. It's all fake, a boy whispered. Karen howled. No! Those are official! But the commander shut her down. Ma'am, this ends now. Phones captured every angle. Laughter filled the night, and I leaned on the gate, shouting, and that, folks, is why I don't join HOAs. The cheer nearly drowned out the rotors. Karen's kingdom had fallen, but the fallout was only beginning. The board members, pale and sweating, quit right there. No one wanted their name tied to the scandal. The HOA, once feared like a shadow government, was crumbling in plain sight. Karen vanished from view, whispers claiming she'd been denied bail. The charges piled up like bricks: conspiracy, impersonating law enforcement, misusing funds, harassment. But what hit me hardest wasn't her downfall. It was how quickly the fear she'd thrived on evaporated. Neighbors who once avoided my eyes now stood at my fence, trading jokes and retelling the chaos. Mrs. Parker, who had fainted during the standoff, came by with another pie. Tears streaking her cheeks, she said, I let her scare me into silence. Never again. I told her not to blame herself. Fear makes people do strange things. Still, the relief on her face showed me this was bigger than me. The whole street had lived under her thumb, and now they were free. Reporters dug deeper, finding Karen had been inflating fines, inventing violations, even using HOA dues to remodel her kitchen. Families stepped forward with horror stories. Thousands in penalties for lawn ornaments, kids' bikes left outside, shutters painted the wrong beige. The fake police stunt wasn't the start. It was the finale of a long-running con. And while the world laughed about HOA cops, we knew the truth. It could have ended in blood. Those toy guns might have gotten someone killed. The thought chilled me even in victory. In the weeks after, the HOA dissolved. The leftover funds, what hadn't been siphoned into Karen's schemes, were refunded to homeowners. The pool was chained shut, the newsletter stopped, and the clipboard dictatorship ended. Life grew quieter for me. My cameras stayed up, but mostly caught deer, raccoons, and neighbors dropping off cookies. The SUVs no longer circled. The only patrol now came from barn cats chasing mice. But at night, sometimes, I'd still hear the phantom thump of rotors in my head, the sound that saved me, exposed her, and changed everything. A month later, I was sipping iced tea on the porch when the Wilson boy wandered over. Hands in pockets, he said softly, Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry. I thought you were the bad guy. Mom told us not to talk to you, but you stood up to her when nobody else would. I smiled, ruffling his hair. That's all right, son. The truth always finds its way out. He grinned, then asked the question I'd expected. Do you think she'll come back? I shook my head. Not like before. Satisfied, he ran off to play. The neighborhood was healing, slowly but surely. But I couldn't help wondering, if one woman with a clipboard could drag us this far, how many other HOAs across America were pulling the same stunts, just without helicopters to expose them? That thought stuck with me. Bullies wear many masks, and sometimes it's a red blazer. The weeks that followed were equal parts relief and reckoning. Relief, because Karen and her so-called police were behind bars, their costumes stripped away. Reckoning, because the community had to face an ugly truth. They had let fear, gossip, and one woman's power trip dictate their lives. Court documents told the rest. Withdrawals from HOA accounts, online orders for tactical uniforms, counterfeit stamps shipped from overseas. The DA laid it all out like a play-by-play. Every neighbor watched the coverage in stunned silence. "She really thought she was untouchable," Mrs. Parker murmured one afternoon at the fence. I think part of me believed it too. I nodded. That's the trick with bullies. They act like they've already won. Makes everyone too scared to test them. Without fear, Karen was nothing more than a loud woman with a clipboard. Within weeks, the HOA collapsed. No board, no bylaws, no dues. Just neighbors learning to live without being policed for the color of their shutters. And the funny thing? The neighborhood didn't collapse. Lawns stayed trimmed, kids still played, property values didn't tank. If anything, people looked freer, lighter. We even threw a block party. A real one, not the approved kind Karen micromanaged. Folks brought barbecue, beans, beer. For the first time in years, laughter echoed down the street without the sound of her heels clicking in disapproval. Neighbors pulled up chairs beside mine. Some apologized, others just said, "Thank you." That's when I realized when I stood at that gate, I hadn't just fought for me. I'd fought for all of us, whether they knew it then or not. Life found a new rhythm. I worked my land, tended the barn, and soaked in the quiet without harassment. But the memory of that morning never left me. The flashing lights, the fake cops, the real SWAT descending like angels of justice. Some nights I'd sit on the porch, cicadas buzzing, and replay the sound of the rotors. Chaos, yes, but also the sound of truth cutting through lies. It reminded me how thin the line is between farce and tragedy. One panicked move and the story could have ended in blood. 3 months later came Karen's sentencing. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors filled the benches, some whispering prayers, others shaking heads. The judge's words were sharp as nails. You abused trust. You endangered lives. You fabricated authority, all for control. Karen tried one last plea, rambling about property values, but no one bought it. The sentence was years in prison, fines she'd never pay. The gavel dropped and applause erupted. People hugged. Mrs. Parker cried openly. For once, the bond wasn't fear, but relief and solidarity. I left with my head high, not for glory, but because the truth had finally won. Back home, life was simple again. The cameras caught raccoons more than anything else. My gate stayed locked, not out of fear, but as a reminder that standing firm matters. One evening, the Wilson boy pedaled up, grinning. "Hey, Mr. Thompson, you're like a hero," I laughed. "Son, I'm just a guy who refused to move." He nodded, satisfied, and rode off. But his words stuck. Maybe he was right in his own way. Not a cape-wearing hero, but proof that ordinary people can stand up to bullies and win. Looking back, I've learned this. Bullies only have the power we hand them. Whether it's a schoolyard tyrant, a bad boss, or a self-appointed HOA president, their strength comes from fear. The moment someone stands tall, their house of cards falls. I never planned to face down Karen's fake police force. I just knew I wouldn't let intimidation define me. And when I stood firm, others found their courage too. My neighbors saw what happens when silence turns to laughter, fear to defiance, lies to truth. That's a lesson bigger than one cul-de-sac. Stand firm. Document everything. Don't be afraid to shine a light on corruption, because justice doesn't always come from a courtroom. Sometimes it comes roaring down from the sky with rotor blades. So if you've faced your own HOA, Karen, or any power-drunk bully, share your story. Drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from. Let others know they're not alone. And if you want more true-to-life HOA battles like this, subscribe. Trust me, the stories only get wilder.